All right. Somewhere in here is video. Alrighty. Welcome back. How you doing? Don't know if you saw my eyebrow exercises. Welcome back to Blackbird News. Please remember to like the video and to make sure that you are still subscribed. Ever important to make sure that you are still subscribed. So jumping in, the dude, how you doing? I actually got the notification early. Awesome. Yeah, so I don't know why that happened, but I had the air time at 2:10, and I actually started the broadcast about 2:07. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know. Welcome, everyone. Rich Diana, Echoes of Not, Magical Thinking Barbie. Greetings, Daniel Grace. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of eye wiggling right now. Don't take it personally. It's just having problems controlling my face. D-Truth, what's up? So, where are we? Yeah, so this is ongoing. Again, continuing news about warm temperatures in Europe, Scandinavia, Moscow, etc. All, the East Coast. We are currently experiencing probably the highest, we had the highest January globally on record. And we are experiencing, probably the warmest winter that we have experienced globally. For many places, it was the winter that wasn't. And a lot of places having minimal snow. I think I was reading an article the other day that I forget the city, was it Helsinki? Had 0.5. Was it 0.4? No, 0.2. I correct myself. 0.2 centimeters of snowfall. Helsinki, Finland. Helsinki, Finland. A place that is typically in the middle of winter, probably under feet of snow. 0.2 centimeters. So yeah, this is ongoing news story. Europe sees warmest winter since records began. This is from today. Scientists say Europe has just seen its hottest winter since records began. From the start of December to the end of February, the average temperature was an extraordinary 3.4 degrees Celsius. 3.4 degrees Celsius above the norm from 1981 to 2010, and 1.4 degrees higher than the previous record set. Ooh, ouch. In 2015, 2016. 2016 being so far the record holder for warmest year on record. That doesn't look good. We are 1.4 degrees C higher than the record-setting 2015-2016 temperature year. Compared to previous winters, this has been unusually warm, says Carlo Buontempo. That's translate into good time Carlo, director of Copernicus. We see this variation from year to year, especially in the tropics, but this really stands out as being a very remarkable and very warm, mild winter for Europe. The EU's Copernicus climate change service data dates back to 1855. That's going fairly far back, I guess. It says seasonal temperatures are often subject to major fluctuations year on year, of course. 1924 to 25 was similarly warm with a couple of degrees above the climate at that time, so you can have a couple of degrees variation above the baseline, and you can expect to have some of those every 50 to 100 years. They are unusual, but they are part of a natural variability. The unseasonal heat has led to the failure, so I don't know what he's trying to say there. I think he's trying to say the climate is always changing. Is that what he's trying to say? The rise isn't only due to global warming. That's, I guess, what he's trying to say. But considering the trend line of temperature records, that's what I was trying to say. Temperature records over the last, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, 2019 years. According to that trend line of temperature records, this isn't natural variability. So I'm gonna have to push back a little on that. Good time, Carlo. The unseasonal heat has led to the failure of the ice wine harvest in Germany and to the strange spectacle of snow having to be helicoptered into a ski resort in France. That's good for the environment. We're gonna helicopter some snow in. I see climate having an impact on almost all our activities, but when you see these large anomalies, and you really understand firsthand what this means, the failed ice wine season in Germany, the incredible warm winter in Russia and Finland, and some parts of Northern Europe, the impact on reindeer herding, for example, because of the warm temperatures, says Buon Tempo. Okay. So there you go. Ongoing heat records being smashed. Let's move on to this article out of the Amazon. And again, this is just something that continues to be repeated about every 3 months. There's an article that comes out or a study that comes out saying that the Amazon is no longer a CO2 sink, that it is flipped to a carbon emitter. And we know that this is on a yearly basis. This is in flux, right? During the winter it emits CO2, or during the summer it absorbs CO2. So it is acting like a lung. It's inhaling and exhaling. However, if the exhale becomes more pronounced and the inhale becomes more shallow, or almost non-existent, then that's a problem. Amazon. So the title of this, and this is from Wednesday, March 4th, tropical forests losing their ability to absorb carbon. Study finds Amazon could turn into source of CO2 in atmosphere by next decade. Tropical forests are taking up less carbon dioxide from the air, reducing their ability to act as carbon sinks and bringing closer the prospect of accelerating climate breakdown. The Amazon could turn into a source of carbon in the atmosphere instead of one of the biggest absorbers of the gas as soon as the next decade, owing to the damage caused by loggers and farming interests and the impacts of the climate crisis, new research has found. If that happens, climate breakdown is likely to become much more severe in its impacts, and the world will have to cut down much faster on carbon-producing activities to counteract the loss of the carbon sinks. So every year that we ignore the problem, every year that we continue to go in the other direction and emitting more carbon, every single year that we do not take this problem seriously is a year that we lose to feedback loops, which will eventually make it impossible to do anything at all if we haven't already crossed that threshold, which many think that we have already crossed. But if you want to really lock it down or lock it in, we could just keep on doing what we're doing, trying to nominate people like Joe Biden or electing people like Donald Trump, which will lock in the permanence of these feedback loops and the We've found that one of the most worrying impacts of climate change has already begun, said Simon Lewis, professor in the School of Geography. That Leeds University, one of the senior authors of the research, this is decades ahead of even the most pessimistic climate models. Let me read that one more time. This is decades ahead of even the most pessimistic climate models. So the worst case scenarios, the absolute worst case scenarios, the worst predictions on the books, this is decades faster than that. Just to put it into context. For the last 3 decades, the amount of carbon absorbed by the world's intact tropical forest has fallen, according to the study from nearly 100 scientific institutions. Lump in the effect of the oceans not being able to absorb any more CO2 and or heat, and they are starting, they will be emitting their CO2 and also their heat, and then wowzers. You can only imagine the fun. They are now taking up a third less carbon than they did in the 1990s, owing to the impacts of higher temperatures, droughts, and deforestation. The downward trend is likely to continue as forests come under increasing threat from climate change and exploitation. The typical tropical forest may become a carbon source by the 2060s, according to Lewis. I mean, the observations on this are all over the place. I mean, I've read articles and studies that have, claimed that the Amazon is already a carbon, a source of carbon that is no longer a carbon sink. And reports on this vary as to, what is actually happening. But basically, they're just describing the idea that they're taking in less carbon every summer, and emitting more carbon, and eventually just will become carbon emitters permanently. Humans have been lucky so far, as tropical forests are mopping up lots of our pollution. They can't keep doing it indefinitely, he told The Guardian. We need to curb fossil fuel emissions before the global carbon cycle starts working against us. The time for action is... When is the time for action? The time is now. So the difference is about the same as a decade of fossil fuel. Hold on, let me go back here. The uptake of carbon from the atmosphere by tropical forests peaked in the 1990s when about 46 billion tons were removed from the air, equivalent to about 17% of carbon dioxide emissions from human activities. By the last decade, that amount had sunk to about 25 billion tons, almost half, or just 6% of global emissions. The difference is about the same as a decade of fossil fuel emissions from the UK, Germany, France, and Canada put together. Climate scientists have long feared the existence of tipping points, quote unquote, in the climate system, which when passed will condemn the world to runaway global heating. Condemn the world to runaway global heating. There are many known feedback mechanisms. For instance, the melting of the Arctic ice leaves more of the sea uncovered, etc., and it is darker, etc. The feedback mechanisms have the potential to accelerate the climate crisis far ahead of what current projections suggest. Shoo, geez. This is not good, guys. Did I mention this isn't good? Echoes of not less than an inch here, less than an inch of snow, I'm assuming. In Philadelphia. First 2 virus cases reported in Philadelphia area today. Welcome to the pandemic. Indeed, it seems to be ramping up. Pandemic panic. It's all the rage. Yeah, hit the like button. Thank you so much, Kent Deal. Trent Black says Paul Beckwith. Paul Beckwith is not necessarily, super out there with predictions. He's probably, he's in between, a conservative voice and a more, what's the word I'm looking for? More alarmist voice, I guess. Paul Beckwith said, "When the Arctic ice melts, humanity will be squashed like a bug." Hapsutaki said, "Did you cover the news article from CBC Canada where they found over 80,000 ticks from a single moose?" I think I actually read something about that in passing. I did certainly hear about that. That's wild and frightening. Christian Sorensen says no snow in Denmark also. Scandinavia on the whole has not experienced much of a winter, as well as Russia, as well as certain parts of the East Coast. In the U.S., Christian Sorensen says, "Beckwith makes me sleepy," but he's right on. Yeah, unfortunately, I like Paul Beckwith. Unfortunately, though, he's got one of those extremely boring professor demeanors. It's like it was really hard to take him for more than 5 or 10 minutes. I kind of agree. I just every time I listen to him, I feel like I'm in the back of a classroom going like this. Wake up. Justin McNeil says, "I've been intentionally ignoring Arctic ice extent for a bit. How fucked are we currently at this moment in time?" Well, you know, in the context of the trajectory of global heating, I would say, we're still pretty fucked. What I did see is that we got some more extent. We got a bit of growth in Arctic ice over the last month or two. So it's not as low as it was in other years. However, the difference between extent and volume are pretty big. We don't have a lot of Arctic ice volume left, and that is the problem, because if you just have a lot of thin ice, if you have extent that, you have a lot of ice but it's all very thin, as soon as the temperature changes, as soon as we kick into summer, then all that's going to go away real fast. It's the thick multi-year sea ice that keeps everything cool and keeps us from having a blue ocean event, but we have very, very little of that left. Proudhon says there seems to be 2 strains of coronavirus. Most of Europe so far seems to have been hit by a weaker strain. Italy and Iran have the more lethal infection by the looks of it. I did not know that. That is interesting information. Thank you. Trent Black says just about every country is seeing heat records unless you count Australia, then you are burned up, and food shortages. A lightning rod says alarmumorist. Doom alarmalist. Or something like that. Valhalla says up a creek without a paddle. Oceanic Estate says Jordan Peterson is greater than Paul Beckwith. Sorry. I don't know. In the Battle of Canadians, yeah, Jordan Peterson is much more interesting to listen to, for sure. However, do you all remember when I covered the interview with Jordan Peterson where somebody asked him about are we going to fix climate change? To his credit, number one, he came out immediately as if he believed completely that climate change was the problem that it is. There was not a denialist nerve or color in his answer on any level. He was like, yeah, we're fucked. And Peterson a little bit. It is a really big problem, and it's real bad, and it's real bad. But are we going to do anything about it? No, I don't think so. I don't think we're fucked. That's exactly what he said. Hey, give it to him for being uh, a realist. And I rather like Jordan Peterson. I don't agree with everything he says. Some of the things you know, some of his views I take issue with, but there are quite a few things that he has some very interesting things to say about. Proudhon says Jordan Peterson has been gravely ill. I did not know that. He's currently in a clinic hospital in Russia. Well, isn't that ironic? Why is he in Russia? The funny thing is he talks. I mean, he's not anti-Russia, I guess, as Russia stands now. But he's, one of his main talking points is how totalitarian communism, in Russia was such a shitty thing, and he, one of the things he talks about is what is it blah bitty blue Marxism. What is it? Somebody help me out. I'm sorry, I totally forgot. Cultural Marxism. Thank you. I had to thank my brain for bringing it back. Valhalla says it is a fact coronavirus has already mutated. Well, I don't disbelieve it. I don't disbelieve it. It would actually make sense if it did mutate, and then that's real bad news, right? I mean, then we're really talking about some serious problems. So yeah, I've been seeing source a Chinese study care of zero. Yeah, I've seen a couple of things. There's a lot of ideas about coronavirus and where it came from and what's happening with it and all of that. And I just saw an article today saying something about how it was actually a biological weapon. It was from us. We created it. And somehow it's going to boomerang all over the place. But honestly, I'm not going to speak any more about that because I haven't really researched it. And I'm speaking on a headline, and that's, generally always trouble for me. Rich Diana says Peterson got depressed over his wife's health and got hooked on the. Oh, that's right. I heard that he was in rehab. That's right. He couldn't get treatment in the West. I mean, Canada has healthcare, right? Universal healthcare. He couldn't get treatment in Canada. I find that a little bit weird. The Russian clinic had a special. Well, you guys clearly know more than I do about all this stuff. The Russian clinic had a special program to get Jordan over his addiction. The withdrawals were nearly killing him. Peterson was only on the meds for a short while. They usually don't result in organ failure. I mean, I am a recovering addict, and I know very, very well how difficult it is for some people to get clean. Some people, struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle, which is why I say that I'm a grateful recovering addict. I'm grateful because I don't feel an urge. I don't feel a need to use, and I haven't for 18 years. So, and by the grace of the universe, the God, the universe, whoever, I don't feel an urge to use. So I'm grateful, and I feel like one of the lucky ones when I see people struggle with addiction. It's really heartbreaking, and I've seen and heard of people literally dying while detoxing, or right after they got clean, and they were in such bad shape that they had a heart attack, or they had organ failure, or they were just in such bad shape they just couldn't pull out of it. Well, he has admitted, Gene. Peterson needs to admit openly. I think he did admit it. Lightning rod. Keep coming back. Sorry, I'm missing some of these comments. Anyways, thank you, Hapsataki. Yeah, I mean, I don't really talk about it that much, but I'm grateful every single day I wake up. I'm incredibly grateful. I'm grateful not to wake up hungover. Good luck, Rich Diana, with your stepdaughter, because it's really um, it's really hard. It's really hard to watch somebody go through that. It's difficult. So lastly, in this, I've got to sign off pretty soon. Somebody sent me this. This is from 2018. Just some random stuff to think about, because this is from a website called Prepare for Change. So this is not necessarily. This has lots of sources in it. This article, which I'm just going to briefly kind of go over. So this is sourced information, but this website, is like one of those websites that you might think is not, necessarily legitimate. Who knows? I have nothing against independent, standalone websites that are trying to give people alternative news. In fact, I totally support it. But it's, if you sent somebody this article, they probably might look at it and go, okay, because of the source. But whatever. That's just me projecting on, somebody else's thoughts about this. Whistleblower reveals military mind control project at major university. So, it's at Arizona State University. What if the government can change people's moral beliefs or stop political dissent? This is actually old news and an old idea. People have been talking about this for a long time, so I wouldn't doubt that something like this is happening. What if the government can change people's moral beliefs or stop political dissent through remote control of people's brains? Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, leaked document reveals that the U.S. government through DARPA research is very close to accomplishing this. Activist Post was recently contacted by an anonymous whistleblower who worked on a secret ongoing mind control project for DARPA. The aim of the program is to remotely disrupt political dissent and extremism by employing transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, in tandem with sophisticated propaganda based on this technology. So I'm going to tell you right now, the sophisticated propaganda is already in place. It's been in place for a long time. So that part is already covered. They don't need to work on that part. All they need to do is work on people being more susceptible to it. And so far, for some people, I already, that you don't really need to employ the transcranial magnetic stimulation. People are already really susceptible to programming as it is. The program, conducted by the Center for Strategic Communication, is based at Arizona State University. The DARPA funding for this project can be confirmed on the ASU website here. The head of the project, Steve Corman, has worked extensively in the area of strategic communication as it applies to terrorism and extremism, or what could be called the war of ideas. What was I just saying? What was I just talking about the other day? The information war, or info wars, the war of ideas, is upon us. Corman's latest project, narrating the exit from Afghanistan, in his many presentations, make it quite obvious that the mission is to shape the narrative. The dissenters of yesterday could easily become the terrorists, sympathizers, and supporters of political violence tomorrow. This DARPA research brings about many ethical questions and dilemmas. Mainly, this research aims to literally induce, or disrupt the operation of narratives within the brain. In other words, the research aims to stop individuals from thinking certain thoughts and make others believe things they normally would not believe. Sounds like a book I read one time. This research has tremendous interrogation possibilities and could potentially be used to more successfully spread propaganda or stop political upheaval to an unsuspecting public. Yeah. I mean, you could put this in the no duh, no duh column, right? Like, no shit, they're already doing that. So like, a lot of this is pretty obvious to many people. But I'm going to list this in the description box, and you guys can go through this and check the links if you want. Interestingly, what I heard a few years ago during the 2016 election, so 4 years ago, there was a lot of talk about. There was not just a lot of talk, but a lot of people proposing the idea and proposing evidence that transmission blocking was being used by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Like, she would give speeches, and what they were saying was that they were setting up like high frequency, or they were setting up towers that were emitting a certain frequency that would block people from being able to hear what was going on in the meetings or in the fundraisers. And then there were also reports that this technology was being used. I'm conflating a couple of different ideas, but just roll with me here. There was also evidence that this type of technology, like a programming technology, was being used when people were talking, like in certain meetings, right? Like they would have, like certain government function meetings, they would have these things that were transmitting a certain frequency that would make people more susceptible to the things that were being said. And people were going in and saying that they felt like they were high or felt like very funny. They would go into these meetings or conferences and they would feel, strange. And people were proposing that this was like a mind control operation. Similarly, during the Democratic National Convention in 2016, when Hillary was nominated, they were saying that this stuff was going on because there were protesters at the convention. They were literally trying to drown them out. They were pumping in fake applause that was drowning out the protesters in the back, and they were also saying that they thought that these machines were being used to generate like susceptibility to the information that was being given on stage. All of that is complete conjecture, right, on my part, but I'm relating something that people were kind of talking about and bringing up. Not just a few people, it was actually quite a few people. I remember distinctly. And Justin McNeil, you're saying you remember that. Yeah. Zoxalix, privacy or sound cannons, yes. So there are two different things. So the two different things I'm conflating is you can have privacy or sound cannons, things that like create like a wall transmission that you can't get, you can't hear through, or you can't eavesdrop on what's the things that are being said. It's like a Faraday cage or whatever, which cuts, all transmissions. A Faraday cage is like a private. Yeah, this is different, but anyways, but the thing that cuts transmissions is not the same as the thing that emits, wavelengths that make you susceptible to ideas or thoughts. So anyways, all that, very nebulous idea that I just proposed there kind of is in line with what's going on here. I mean, this is technology that a lot of people think has been out there for a long time. So, and I wouldn't doubt it, considering the fact that DARPA has been around for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. Hapsataki, electromagnetic manipulation, and all that jazz. Yes, exactly. Prudhomme says, who is in charge of Joe Biden's mind? So wait, oh, that gets even deeper. Man, I don't even know if I have time for this discussion, guys. Uh, there also was a lot of talk about Hillary Clinton having certain medical problems that were like she had some kind of electronic implant like in her cortex or close to her cortex that was keeping her like aware or keeping her functioning. And I'm wondering also about Joe Biden because his cognitive decline is pretty clear and evident, and I'm just wondering what kind of stuff is going to be said or what kind of things are going to be proposed about what is going on with Joe Biden as the presidential race goes forward. Things have the only way to go is more weird, I think. Definitely, because things are definitely going to get really weird, especially if Joe Biden is the nominee. Yes, Reverend Walker, exactly. So I was going there with this 5G. 5G. So this all ties into 5G. So 5G works on the shortwave signals or shorter length wavelengths of Wi-Fi signals, and they're saying that this is in conjunction with mind manipulation or crowd control or mind control, people control. That the 5G is actually, it's not because the shorter wavelength. You have to have more towers in order to use 5G. So it's actually not as a Wi-Fi emitter. It's not very good. It's not very effective. But it's effective because this certain frequency can be used to manipulate people. So that's kind of where I was going with that. Anyways, we just covered a lot of ground there. And with that, I'm going to have to sign off in about 30 seconds. Raza Remen, targeted advertising and mind control. Yes. Karen Daly, droid Hillary and Biden. Exactly. So, it's interesting that they put two people up that were, have serious health issues and, literally propped them up as the establishment picks. I mean, all that being said, it can't be, a Biden nomination is just not a good thing. It's not going to work. Justin McNeil, Hillary used white noise generators during her meetings with high dollar. Yeah, exactly. So they couldn't listen in. Yes. But what I was hearing is that during the DNC, during the Democratic convention, that they were using not just piped in crowd noise, but they were also using some kind of transmission, some kind of manipulation was going on. And that is all just speculation on my part. So I'm not saying this actually happened. Just stuff that I heard that was interesting. Okay, before I go, guys, I got a couple super chats. And I want to give a shout out to the super chats. Or I got one super chat from Brett Taylor. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for your contribution. I think maybe I got another one. I don't know. No, I think that was it. Huh. Okay. Lightning Rod says, I have installed white noise generators to quiet office floors. Interesting. Okay. Raza Remen says, Kevin, join me in the Electric Eels Farms, please. I don't know what that is. I will try. Well, anyways, guys, thank you for joining in. And boiled rope lamppost. Music makes me high. Pipe it in. Yes. Music is very effective in, mood control or, mood optimization, if you will. Maple syrup prevents corona. Get out of here. Is that true? I agree. No representation. You're right. Tulsi is in the best shape candidate. I actually, now I'm actually now okay. They're gonna leave her out of the debate next week, which I have mixed emotions about. But I'm actually happy that Tulsi is still in the race. Because you look at, you got two geriatric seniors, and you've got one young, like, you know vibrant woman who has an amazing political platform as the only other candidate left. In a way, it's like the perfect storm for something wild to happen, right? So I'm actually glad that Tulsi's the last woman standing, and I hope she stays in for a little while and toughs it out. All right, guys, thank you so much. Peace be unto you, and I will see you on the next one.